Hello ladies and gentlemen, and everyone watching. Today we will be talking about the problems with the horror genre, specifically with the movies. Now everything you're about to hear is all my opinions, so if you disagree at any point, you're just wrong. Now, I'd love to hear any of your guys' thoughts on any of my nitpicks below. And that's what this is, just a whole bunch of me bitching. And you know what they say, you only complain a lot about something you love and then eventually file for divorce. But before we fully jump in, if you're new here, welcome, and if you're returning, it's good to see you again. Alright, you're gonna be my therapist, but the difference is, you can't report me. Let's get into it. My biggest problem with the horror genre, mainly in movies, is sometimes it just feels like the horror movie is just the director's fetish being put on film, and that director's forcing us to watch it as the viewer. Now what I mean by that is there are so many horror movies where it's just the whole point of it is torturing one person or a couple of people. Usually women. I mean, we even have a final girl trope. That's the girl who lasts the whole horror movie watching all of her friends get murdered, while simultaneously getting beaten all throughout the movie. Now that trope is usually done tastefully, especially when they actually empower the characters with the brain and some level of fight. And that sentiment goes for horror movies that torture people as well. It's usually done tastefully. Well, tastefully when it comes to like horror movies. I'm almost certain if you show a Marvel fan something like Hostel,
I don't like that name.
they're not going to want to speak to you again. And that actually leads me to a good example of when torturing people is for fun, and it doesn't feel like there's ill will behind it. And that's the Saw franchise. It's brutal for a purpose. Granted, that purpose gets a bit mucked up with John Kramer and fucking Mark Hoffman.
I call that epic bad luck.
I'm gonna kill myself!
But also, it tortures everyone. It's not just like, here's an attractive woman, we're gonna beat the shit out of her for the next hour and a half. And on top of that, the torture is fun in a weird way. Torture is torture, I know, bad. But Jigsaw made a game out of it. It's kind of fun, right? You know what's not fun? Hannibal Holocaust. That's an example of a horror movie being brutal for just the sake of being brutal. 1980's Cannibal Holocaust is a found footage from a crew that went missing after going to a remote island inhabited by cannibals. And it's just a shock horror movie that's shock for the sake of shock. And yes, that has its place in horror. It's a huge part in what makes things scary. But behind the scenes, it can be taken way too far by directors, producers, and so many others. And with Hannibal Holocaust, there's a couple examples within that prove my point. Like animal cruelty. In the movie itself, it shows that roughly 6 animals get killed, and like those are real animals. Reportedly, it's in the teens of how many animals they actually killed on set. But there was no point in the killings. I understand it. We eat animals. I'm smoking a brisket right now. I'm gonna eat a cow.
If I was a bad bitch, I wanna fuck me too. I wanna suck me too.
I'm gonna take a bite out of the fucking cow. But in the movie, an example of them killing an animal just to kill an animal, they grab a turtle from where it's just chilling, living its best life. Another one grabs a machete, they put the turtle up on a log, the guy with the machete just goes down on it. Heads don't come off easily because there's a lot of skin and ligaments, so he has to hack at the turtle's head. And then all the actors on set reach inside of its decapitated body and just start pulling out insides and just eating it raw. And while they do eat some of the turtle, they don't eat all of it. They even cooked it later and still left some meat. And if you've ever hunted or have talked to any hunter friends, and those who are responsible with it, they will always tell you that if you're going to kill an animal, you need to use up that whole entire animal or else it's waste. And they also just kill animals for sacrifices. And unfortunately, animal cruelty is pretty common in Hollywood and the movie sphere. Recently it's been better, but there's so many atrocities of us humans just torturing animals for the sake of entertainment. Even the legend Alfred Hitchcock not only abused crows, but abused his actor, Tippi Hedren, who they taped live crows to and also threw live birds at. Which, that's kind of funny thinking about it, because it's like dodgeball but with crows. But those are real lives, those aren't balls, so it's not funny. There's nothing to gain from killing a real-life animal for a fictional movie.
Did Alfred Hitchcock try to have sex with you?
Well, he never got that far. I stopped it immediately.
Hitchcock retaliated, she says, with pure cruelty. He replaced mechanical birds with real ones in that famous attack scene from The Birds. That's not fake blood. She really was pecked in the face by the birds.
He told me he'd ruined my career.
And if somehow you can give Cannibal Holocaust a pass for the animal cruelty and the deaths, reportedly the director, Ruggero Deodato, I don't give a shit, this guy's a dickhead. This guy, there's a scene with a tribeswoman, and that scene is a scene, and reportedly they didn't tell her that it would be that type of scene. And this movie just absolutely savors in any sexual assault, rape, or murder. Anything that will make you slightly uncomfortable, they do that times 10. And there is a fine line of art and real life, and Cannibal Holocaust doesn't just jump that fucking line. It shoots itself over with a cannon. And Cannibal Holocaust leads me into the mistreatment and over-sexualization, and basically everything when it comes to horror. So we'll start with the mistreatment of actors who play our favorite roles. And by the way, quick side note, when I say actors, I'm talking about women, men, whoever is acting. Because not only are they all just acting, so actors, but also if I said actors and actresses every single time, it's too many words, and I'm already saying enough. Not only in horror, but just in general, the movie world, they haven't always had the actor's safety in mind. Now turning it back to horror, there are countless examples of horror movies where the on-set environment was as toxic as can be, which sometimes led to injuries or even worse. And usually there's a justification that comes with it saying that they need to push the actors. And with horror, it's to push them to get to a certain level of terrified. And to that, I argue, I don't know, man, just let the actors act. Like, I personally don't think you need to make Shelley Duvall do 127 takes where she's constantly walking, just to get the perfect scene. Now, that example is arguable because Shelley Duvall herself said that the intense environment elevated that performance. And you can argue that all you want. But what you can't argue is making someone's eardrum rupture is part of adding to the scene. That's what happened to PJ Soles in the 1976 film Carrie, when telepathic Carrie goes on her rampage inside her high school gymnasium. A victim of that terror is Norma, played by PJ Soles, and her death comes from a fire hose. On set, they used a real-life fire hose. If you don't know what a fire hose does, this is what it does. PJ Soles has gone on to say this about the stunt.
I guess he wanted me to, get batted around with the fire hose, but the fire chief said it's very dangerous to put the fire hose on full force. I really don't want to do it. And Brian's like, no, we have to have it look real. I want a full force of water coming out. When I turned my head, it was so strong. Full force went into my ear and just instant pain. And that's the last shot you see is actually my eardrum bursting, which you lose your sense of equilibrium, and I just slid down like that. So no acting involved, complete pain.
That's just so neglectful, and there are so many more examples of these smaller incidents of someone behind the scenes either not caring or skimping on safety that led to the injury of actors. And most of the time, those injuries just get brushed off. Now to move on to some more severe examples of actor mistreatment that also ties in with the over-sexualization of the genre, and abuse that does affect children. So here's a heads up right now, what I'm about to talk about involves child molestation, grooming, and assault on minors. What you need to know if you want to skip that doesn't involve any of that, the horror genre is a huge gateway for new actors to start their career. That offers a huge power imbalance from actors to directors. And there's horrible people who abuse that power to get their way with anything, and that ranges from all ages. And obviously this isn't just seen in the horror genre. I mean, you got people like Shirley Temple.
The office of Arthur Freed. And he was going to talk to me about a movie he wanted to put me in. I'm 12 years old, And I thought he was a producer. But instead, he was an exhibitor. And I'd never seen anyone naked before, except myself. So I had no clue about what was happening. And so it struck me so funny, I laughed at him. And I laughed uproariously. I had tears, and he got infuriated. And he said, out, go.
Or recently, a big case that broke was the Olga Harvey Weinstein. I just pointed out with horror specifically, it seems that that's the place where actors try to make their first big wave. And some of them might become victims of the power-hungry people who can make up so many promises about their career. I think that's a good enough synopsis of what I'm about to talk about, and that was your warning, so if you need to skip, please skip now. I think the most infamous example of a director abusing his power in the horror genre is Victor Salva. Victor Salva is best known for writing and directing Jeepers Creepers 1 through 3. He also molested a child. Victor Salva had groomed and molested Nathan Forrest Winters. The grooming had taken place all throughout the 1980s, and with Nathan wanting to be a movie star, and Victor Salva having ties with the movie industry, there was such an open door for Victor to abuse that power. He did. Nathan was able to star in a movie, Clown House, and reportedly during the time of the filming and the release was when Victor Salva was molesting Nathan. Again, this is after years of grooming, as Victor Salva was a family friend. When Nathan's family found out and went to the police, Victor Salva was arrested, and from that they were able to add 3 counts of using a child under 14 for pornography, as well as the lewd or lascivious act upon a child, as well as an extra sex offense. His punishment was to be put on the registry, and he got less than half a year of jail time. To make that spit in the face worse, Victor Salva found his success after he molested Nathan. And the most recent work from Victor Salva was from 2017. For 30 years now, he's been making horror movies, not good ones I might add. And unfortunately, there's a possibility that when he dies, he might be remembered as a director rather than a child molester. I can't explain the level of disdain I have, not only for, child molesters and anyone who does that type of shit, as I'm sure most people with a head do, not our politicians or judges, because they're so cool. But the amount of anger I get knowing Salva got success and got money and famous after he did what he did to Nathan, it's like, how, you should be castrated. I don't know. The reason I structured my video to get more severe with the examples, from smaller neglectful type of mistreatments to assaulting a minor, is to point out the spiral that takes place when someone abuses their power. It starts out small, like torturing women. Well, that's not small. I mean by actually hitting them or cutting them or making them run fucking thousands of feet. And if those small examples of someone abusing power doesn't get checked, then it can crescendo into events worse and worse until it leads to something like Victor Salva. Now, I mentioned at the beginning another one of my biggest problems with horror movies is the over-sexualization. I said of everyone, but again, it's specifically women. And this problem I have with the sexualization in horror stems from knowing how many people abuse their power. Frankly, I'm not the biggest fan of watching people make sweet love in a movie. To me, it just doesn't really add anything, and it's not entertaining to me. Oh, you guys are in love? Why not just go get dinner or kiss? I'm just watching a shitty movie about the Bye Bye Man, and all of a sudden, these two fuckers are just doggy styling it. Also, get some oomph in your whatever. I realize how hypocritical that is, because I'll watch someone get decapitated and be like, yeah, that's cool. But then I see someone flinging their thing around, and I'm like, ah. Put that away, you heathen. But no, my main problem with sex scenes and just the over-sexualization in the horror genre, again, goes back to my point of me thinking I'm just watching the director's fetish. And with those directors or producers abusing those powers. Because there's so many times I'm watching a horror movie and some young lady just goes shirtless, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world. No, I just question if the director was like, I want to see some boobs. I want to point out that I am okay with scenes where the nudity makes sense. So I know I ragged on Carrie earlier, but I'll put it on a pedestal now. In the scene where Carrie's getting bullied because she got her period late, it makes a lot more sense why everyone's naked in that scene. Well, I don't know about everyone, because in high school, I remember there's only a couple dudes who felt comfortable enough to go, free-flowing. And hey man, confidence is key, but that scene makes more sense because all the other guys were like, oh, we see that you're bleeding! And that leads to them making fun of her, which leads to her killing them. So that's part of the story. However, if it's just we're teenagers and we're gonna go it's okay. And squirrels are gonna go get some nuts. And when random scenes just show up where it's two teens in a summer camp just full on fucking, I question to myself, could we not just get some sort of scene that implied that? Or did we have to see nudity? And again, there's another line here in the sand where sex does sell. And to me, the problem is when it crosses this line over to the director just wants to see some tits. So an example, there's a ton of skinny dipping scenes out there. Why? Because girls just go skinny dipping all the time. Just, hey girls, let's go on our leisurely skinny dipping. And there's been a lot of examples where actors will come out later in life and say yeah, if I didn't show my tits, I wouldn't have gotten the job. And that is the problem I am talking about. Go free the nipple. If the actor's yeah, I want these bad boys out, then let them out. But if the director's I want those bad boys out, fucking lock them up.
Entonces no hubo manera de quitarles las mallas.
Esa tiene buenas piernas. Esa tiene buenas piernas.
Tiene unas piernas estupendas.
Vemos que el casting tiene fotos picantes. Con las tetas al aire.
If I'm watching a movie and it feels like a scene is not meant for me, but rather a director, and it includes a young woman getting naked, I don't feel comfortable. And the power imbalance between actor and director and producer or whatever is just so apparent that I don't think you can ignore it when it comes to the absolute need to have some young women be naked on film. I think I made my point here. I'm cool with sex scenes and nudity, as long as I don't think it's the director being yeah. With all that being said, there is a huge threshold for the problems that I've talked about when it comes to the horror genre. Besides the sexual assault, abuse, hurts, all that disgusting criminal shit, that's obviously bad and there's no excusing that. But the tropes of the horror genre, so like final girls, shock value, nudity, just beating the absolute fuck out of someone for an hour and a half. Those things help make the genre so enticing. But it feels as if the horror genre allows directors and producers to cross the line of pushing artists to just straight up abusing them. And while that happens in Hollywood, no argument here on that, I mentioned how the horror genre is like a gateway entry into the career of acting. There's been so many big name actors who started off in a small role in horror genres or a big role in horror genres. And at the beginning, it just seems to be flooded with so many bad apples who are just waiting to take advantage of a great actor, which has allowed the examples I have talked about and then some. And hey, maybe I'm just a little baby bitch. If you feel that way, then let me know down below. But if any of my points kind of resonated with you, then let me know. As I get older and closer to sweet death, I've caught myself turning off more horror movies because it just feels like I'm watching the director want to watch someone get beaten on. And I swear, I don't turn off horror movies because I'm scared. Nothing scares me. But if I feel like the director's getting more entertainment out of torturing someone or watching someone's tits than me, there's a problem. Because I fucking love that shit. If you're new here and you're still here, I want you to know that most of my videos are not like this. I do complain a lot, but it's not the entire video of me just crying. So if you're new and you feel inclined to do so, go check out those videos, and hopefully I'll earn your subscription. You don't have to like this video because I just, again, bitch for 10 minutes. But I genuinely am curious on your opinion. I think this is enough talking for a couple days. I'm gonna go nonverbal and make people worried about me. Alright, have a good one.